The talk around Boston today, Brad Marchand, the former captain and one of the all-time great Bruins, returns to the city, returns to TD Garden, but this time as a member of the Florida Panthers. And to make matters worse, has a Stanley Cup ring now with the Florida Panthers. This is the game that a lot of Bruins fans have had circled on the calendar. And if you are expecting a hostile environment tonight for Brad Marchand, you're going to be mistaken. You're going to be disappointed. If you're expecting a hostile atmosphere tonight for Don Sweeney, you might get what you paid for there. They're going to do a tribute video. It'll be emotional, and the crowd will go nuts for Brad Marchand. There will be a massive pop for him. I don't think you'll hear any boos from the TD Garden crowd, even though a lot of them will have had a lot of boos at that point. 7:40 puck drop on ESPN. We should get 7 o'clock. What's wrong with 7 o'clock? What happened to 7 o'clock? Anyway, I don't think you're going to hear much jeering in the direction of Brad Marchand in this game. In fact, I think they will be overly praising Brad Marchand, if that makes sense. Like if he scores a goal and they announce it afterwards on the PA, there will be cheers that Brad Marchand scored a goal. There are some Bruins fans who I see on social media who gave up on the team and have become Panthers fans. Those are not real Bruins fans. They won't be in the building tonight, but you'll certainly still see a lot of 63 black and gold jerseys there. What bugs me about this whole Brad Marchand thing is that you can still be pissed off as a Bruins fan, the fact that Brad Marchand plays for the Panthers and was a huge reason why they won the Stanley Cup last year. In fact, if he wasn't there, they literally probably don't win the Stanley Cup. They do not win it. Like they were down 2-0 to Toronto, and they were in overtime of a game they were down by 2 goals twice. Like they had no business winning that game. Brad Marchand scored the OT winner and got them back into that series. And that became a whole different run for Florida because of what Brad Marchand could do. And obviously we saw what he did in the Stanley Cup final. So you can be mad about that. Like this team that we don't like ends up winning the cup because of Brad Marchand. But it's tough for me to be mad about the trade. Like revisionist history. And I love dumping on Don Sweeney as much as the next guy. But the deal that Brad was looking for in Boston was not going to benefit the Bruins too much. Not really, because they were a last place team and he was their second best forward. Okay. He was not going to do what he did with the Panthers while he was still with that basement dwelling Bruins team. So I don't expect there to be a lot of hostility towards Brad Marchand tonight, but going towards Don Sweeney, maybe, because to me, this game goes one of 2 ways. The first way is kind of how it went last year when the Panthers came to Boston after the Marchand trade, but Brad wasn't playing. You'll remember it was a really exciting game. It was back and forth. It was a 3-2 Bruins win. Nikita Zadorov had that big fight with Sam Bennett, and the crowd went nuts, and it was galvanizing for about 3 games, and that was it. So it could happen that way, and the Bruins really need a win here. But the other and more likely scenario is they lose. They lose something like 5-2. Brad Marchand scores 2 goals, and they're feeding him trying to score on the empty net to make it a hat trick in his return to Boston, which I know he would probably love to stick that in Don Sweeney's face, maybe not the rest of the fan base. And the fans get restless, and they start chanting "Fire Sweeney" again. And they're wondering why they're sitting here in $150 seats in the upper deck, the gallery gods, wondering why they're spending their money on that and $12 a beer just so they could see Brad Marchand, the guy that should still be on their team in their minds, scoring a couple goals against them for the team that they probably hate the most right now. Like there's always that hatred for Montreal. There's a pity kind of hatred for Toronto. But I think the team that Bruins fans hate the most right now is the Florida Panthers. So yeah, it's frustrating seeing Brad Marchand playing for that team, succeeding for that team. But lest we forget, this is a guy who didn't really force his way out of here. You know, he asked for a contract that the Bruins weren't willing to meet, and I'm glad the Bruins weren't willing to meet it, but he wasn't going crazy. He's going 3 years at what, 7.5? It's not enough. It's too much, but it's not crazy. It's not to the point where you're thinking, man, this guy does not want to be here anymore. And he's clearly showing it. That's not the case. And he is going to have his number 63 retired to the rafters in the next couple of years, whenever this 6-year contract actually ends for Brad Marchand and he retires. He will be in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and he will be all over the Bruins record books. He already is. He's 4th all time in goals scored for the Boston Bruins, 4th in games played, 5th in total points for a 100-year-old original 6 franchise that has had some of the very best players ever to play this sport wearing that sweater. Brad Marchand is among the very best. The very best. So is it frustrating to see him in another uniform? Yeah. Is it kind of Brad Marchand's fault? Kind of. But this is unlike anything we've seen really from the Bruins, in terms of guys coming back. And it's really been a while since I can think of an example like this for guys coming back in Boston sports. Usually it's either the Zdeno Chara route and their time was just done and they come here and they get, unbelievable applause because they're playing for somebody that they don't really care about. In that case, it was Washington, and then the New York Islanders actually might have been the first game where they had the crowd. Then there are guys that force their way out and they are hated for the rest of the time in Boston. Kyrie Irving, Johnny Damon, of course, going to the Yankees. That's the one place they really don't want to see you go. And Brad Marchand somewhere in between. He's this beloved player who didn't force his way out, but he's also playing for a team you really don't like. So I'm very fascinated to see how the response is at the Garden tonight. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. What should it be like for Brad Marchand tonight? Let me know in the comment section. Then be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We come at you live every weekday, noon Eastern time on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcasts as well. It's kind of a must-win game for the Bruins, too. They've lost 4 in a row, but so have the Panthers. So that'll be very interesting.